World War II, GIs were apt to bring home a trophy, a war trophy from one of the Axis powers, whether it be the Japanese or the Germans. Today, we're going to be looking at the Type 14 Nambu and a couple of the other ones that they might have brought home. Welcome back to Forest Firearms, everybody. I'm Ivan, and today we're going to start the quest for Type 14 Nambu reliability. This video came to mind for me because I've always had a little bit of an infatuation with Nambu pistols. I like how they look. I like how they feel in hand. I've owned several, but I've never really been able to get one to work correctly, and I've seen some high-profile YouTubers try to use them too. Nothing but jams, and even one guy had one go off in his hand, as I'm sure some of you people have seen, and it really sealed the fate for the reputation of these handguns. These handguns have a pretty poor reputation in the United States. And I feel like Kijiro Nambu was not an idiot. He did a lot of very good gun designs in his career, and he spent a better part of 45 years working on his series of handguns. And I have a hard time believing that he did a horrible job, and I have a feeling that there's being something lost in translation with using these handguns. So I could be wrong, but I thought if a guy could throw enough money and time and effort into trying to get one of these old girls to work correctly and use it against some of its era counterparts, that it may not be as bad as some people say it is, or I could be wrong. So, but this is why it's a quest. We will see if I can get it to work correctly. This particular one is a earlier model. It, as you can tell, mainly because it has the small trigger guard. The later ones would have a larger trigger guard on it. And also, if you want to come in here and look at the code, if you want to date Japanese pistols, you have to figure out which emperor it's involved. It was underneath, basically. This one is Hirohito, and he started in 1925, so 10 years after his reign, third month, so that makes it 1935 in March. So a pretty early pistol, and compared to some of the later ones that I've owned, the machining in this is beautiful. It's every bit as nice as my 1916 Luger. So I think this is not a bad piece to try to get this thing to work correctly. Also, I have maybe an odd connection to Japanese handguns. Both of my great-grandfathers served in the Pacific, and one of them was actually captured and tortured by the Japanese. They took bamboo shoots and they hammered him underneath his fingernails into his joints, and he couldn't move his fingers afterwards. It was pretty horrible. So I've always had from a young age, heard a lot about the Japanese and the Pacific, and maybe that's why I have some of the interest in the Japanese firearms. Also, this particular one is a bringback. You can tell it's in original condition, and this is the original holster. It is broken. It normally would have a clamshell over the top, like a little Luger holster, but bigger. And also in these holsters, you have a place for an extra magazine on the inside. It would be a cleaning rod. This one actually still has its original firing pin in there. I opened up some stuff and there was still sand on the inside of the pouch and on the inside of where this is. Maybe it's original sand from one of the beaches in the Pacific, maybe it isn't, but it was kind of interesting. Everything was very sandy on the inside of the parts. And also in this little pouch they'd put 2 15-round packs of ammunition. So that's kind of how they ran their pistols. Keep in mind, yes, it would have a clamshell over the top, but that's how they did it. Here's some of the other pistols that would have been in service when the Nambu was first adopted. I'm talking about the first Nambu, the Type A, or the Grandpa or Papa, depending on which one you're looking at. Kijiro Nambu got these things started, at least the design started in the early 1900s, like 1902, 1904, and it was approved for the Japanese military's acquisition. They didn't really adopt it, but they allowed officers to start purchasing them in 1906. And if you... Okay guys, sorry, we had a little camera malfunction there. We'll pick up right where I left off. If you think about it, when the first Nambus, the Type A's, were being approved for acquisition by NCOs in the Japanese military, the Americans were still issuing. This was their pistol, the Colt New Army. This was what they still had in holsters at the time. They were on the path. They were on the path to getting a semi-automatic handgun, but this is what the Americans were running. The British were running these old Webleys. Yes, this is a Mark I, but the later variants were very similar to this. But in the early 1900s, this was good enough for them. The Russians, with the Nagant revolver, almost no redeeming quality except for they tend to work, which is, handy. But this is what the Russians thought was okay for an officer. And the Germans weren't even running the Lugers yet. They were still running Reichs revolvers of all things, which were pretty horrible handguns in their own right. And they were almost here, but they weren't quite here yet in having soldiers walking around the battlefield with these pistols. But Nambu was way ahead of the curve when he came out with his Nambu pistol, and the Japanese military had a pretty good handgun early on if they wanted to purchase it. It wasn't until 1925 that this modernized version, the 14, was actually adopted by the Japanese military, and maybe by that time it was a little antiquated. By that time the Germans had used the Luger, a pretty good toggle lock action. Locks open, you can change mags and close it closed, and they were already on their path to looking at the Walther P38. They were going that way, and the Americans were running old slab sides, the 1911. This was a very modern handgun when it came out, and almost every pistol that we've ever touched here on out has a lot of flavor of the 1911 on it, with the magazine release, how all the operation works. But yes, maybe by World War II, the Nambu was starting to look a little old. It was still a little bit old world. But I believe that for the time, it wasn't horrible. And for what the application was supposed to be for the Nambu, it wasn't the worst gun in the world, if we can get one to work correctly. So basically, turn this on. Yeah, that's safety. We will go down the rabbit hole and see if I can get one of these old girls working. And maybe I can, maybe I can't. But why don't you join me and we can figure it out. First time trying out these Valinki boots. 2 thumbs way up. Okay, first try for this old girl, and who knows how long, could be since World War II. Oh. Okay, that took a little persuasion. Let's see if it fires. Okay, we got one. Did not pick up the next round. Okay, let's try it again. Little jam. Another little jam. Oh yeah, looks like this is what it's gonna be doing. Man, another. Stovepipe, and that's it. Okay guys, so when I first bought this old girl, the first thing I threw on it was some of this rem oil, and upon shooting it, seemed like it just whisked off really quick and did not stick around very good. So I know this can be a little bit of a controversial product, but I love it. It's called Frog Lube, and I find on some of my older guns that have a hard time with lubrication and they seem like they need more lubrication, some Frog Lube really seems to help. So I'm going to put some of that on there, and also maybe a little bit unorthodox, but I have had some experience with this too. I put a little Frog Lube inside the magazine, and I actually lightly wiped a little Frog Lube on every single shot. So we'll go try this out right now, and we will see if that helps at all. I've done nothing to the springs, I've done nothing else to it, so we will see. Okay guys, this is gonna be shooting test number 2. As you've seen in the first one, I tried to shoot it, I had some jams, I had some issues, but it was snowing pretty hard and I didn't have a lot of time, so I only tried those 5-6 shots and then I bounced. So the snow has got a little better, and I oiled the inside a little bit. I haven't done anything to the springs yet. I just loaded up another, I think about 6 or 7 rounds, and let's see if it functions. I haven't tried it. So like I said, here's your safety. You can't cock it unless it's on. Let's see if I can. Okay, it took the first one pretty easy this time. Let's see if this works. It's just gonna be, I just kind of set up a piece of wood over there. Let's see if I can hit it. Okay, guys. Let's see what happened actually. Okay, we got a little issue here. Looks like the extractor got bent a little bit upon firing. Yeah, okay. So I'm gonna have to work and get that out and mess with that extractor. It looks like the extractor must have got hung up on one of the brass when it was going forward, and it doesn't really want to pick up the next round. So I'm gonna see if I can pull that out real quick and figure out why the heck that's happening. But we got a couple rounds through, so that is much, much better than the first time around. Okay guys, as I said in the last video, you can see that extractor. I've had this happen before on a previous Nambu, where sometimes when the brass does not quite make it out of the chamber, it can flex on that extractor and actually bend it. It's not that big of a deal to fix for the short term, but it does weaken, I'm sure, the extractor in the long term. You just pull this out. There's a little detent in there. Maybe I can show you guys in a later part, but you lift this up, you pull it out, and then you can bend it back together, but I'm sure that weakens it. So I'm gonna have to look and see how hard it is to get a replacement for this particular one. And it's kind of a interesting comparison. The PPSH 41, see, this is not finished yet, guys. I've been having a hard time with it. Has the same exact style of extractor. It's on the top. I actually had, you might be able to see the flex in this one. I had an out of battery detonation in this, which destroyed a bunch of stuff on it, which is actually why you haven't seen it for a little bit. I'm working to figure out why that happened, but it actually exploded and bent this extractor all the way out and exploded my firing pin and everything on the inside. And I was able to reform it to get it to work again, but it continues to have this bow in it, and I'm guessing it's pretty much shot if anything like that were to happen again. But just kind of an interesting comparison is they both have about the same extractor design. So kind of interesting. Well, we'll see if I can get it fixed, and then we'll get back to it on this old girl. Okay, like I said earlier, guys, this is already bent up, but you lift on this, you give it a little tug, and you see the extractor comes off. And actually, I doubt this thing has ever been off the gun. This is 827. 827. As you can see, there's another 827 on there, and it's hidden a little bit, but it's up there inside the trigger guard too. So this is a, oh, there it is again. This is an all-matching gun, so it's a little bit of a shame that this original part took so much, damage in its own right. But I'm gonna try to use it while I can. Just be very easy with it, and try to install it back in the gun. I did some reading, and it's something I did know, but that cartridge that I've been using, that I bought from Precision, it was their 83 grain stuff that does not like getting out of the chamber in time, so I'm hearing of people breaking extractors using that. So I ended up ordering some new ammo, and also I have some of my own reloading stuff I'm going to try to do. So, but I just wanted to show you guys that. So I'm going to try to ease it back into place and slip it in. You can see how it fits in there. Clean this up, slip it back in there, and maybe we can get going again. Okay, so I got it reinstalled, and let's just take an empty piece of brass, drop it in there, and let's see if it extracts. Let it close on there, then, oh yes it did. Okay, so we seem to be back in function. So we will see when I get that new ammo what it does. Okay, so we've had a delivery. My new ammunition have showed up. As you can see, this is the stuff I was using before. This is a Cursed cartridge company, precision cartridge. This is their 83 grain stuff, and the new ammunition is from Buffalo Arms. It's 100 grains, and it's actually made from resized 357 SIG cases, which is kind of interesting. You might be able to see that. Oh, if it'll actually... Yeah, there it goes. You can see that 357 SIG, which is kind of interesting. If we do a comparison right here of the precision stuff, this is their 83 grain, like I said. The actual profile of the projectile is way different. You can see how much flatter the precision cartridge bullet is than the Buffalo Arms. So I have a feeling that the Buffalo Arms 100 grain bullet will feed better, but I actually have a little experiment. So let's actually try that. Let me not get this stuff mixed up. Okay. Let's pull out the gun. Magazine is empty. The chamber is empty, and I am going to take the firing pin out of this Nambu and see if I can get a couple rounds to feed into the chamber, because it is reformed brass and the bullet shape is just a hair different. I will say that the Buffalo Arms stuff looks much more like the original bullets that I've seen online. But let's just throw 3 in there, and you can see. Let's see if I can show you guys. You can see all the way through, so there's nothing in there. Let's just see. Okay. Oh yeah, one fell on the floor, but it seems to feed. So I have a feeling that this stuff will probably be just fine. Also, here's just a little tip with Nambus. You don't want to dry fire Nambus. So I find it's much easier. Make sure it's all empty. Pull the trigger and drop that firing pin all the way in, so it's not, you know, you can see it'll sit on the sear. Let it drop in, and so you don't have to dry fire it or accidentally dry fire it, because the triggers on these are actually pretty light. They're actually pretty nice. So let me just roll this on. There it goes. And we are back in business. So yeah, we will try out this new Buffalo stuff, and we will see if it works. Okay guys, function test number 3. I got that Buffalo Arms ammunition in here, and haven't tried it yet, so let's see if it functions. Chambered well. Okay. For the most part, it worked way better. I spit one of them out on accident. Interesting. So that stuff definitely had more power to it also. I'm gonna just throw in this last round real quick. Okay, let's try it again. Okay, and it locked back. I think that this stuff is way better. I can definitely feel the recoil. I'm thinking that this is going to be a much better load to use. It looks like I might have accidentally or before I should have, I might have ejected around, but I'll look around. But I think we have a winner with this load. Okay, guys, so now we're gonna do 5 rounds accuracy at 10 yards. I just set up this little plank from our target, and I'm gonna take 5 shots, and let's see. I don't normally do this on my videos, but since this stuff seems to be working, I say let's try it. The triggers are pretty good on these things. Oh, I dropped it a little bit. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So all of them made it about there at 10 yards. I'm gonna load up 5 more rounds, and I'm gonna see if I can shoot it any better standing instead of trying to rest on that piece of wood. I'm not so sure that that was the best idea, but we'll try it out. Okay, guys, now 5 rounds at 10 yards standing without a support. I'm not so sure that that support was a great idea. I'll try to take my time. It seems to be patterning on the left side, but we'll see if that was just me. Okay, that's another 5 out of the gun. No malfunctions, guys. I'm thinking that that buffalo arm stuff is excellent. So let's just come over and see. I started shooting a little faster than I probably should have, but looks like I put maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it looks to me like it likes to pattern a little bit left. So I'll have to keep that in mind when I'm shooting this thing. It's either me or the gun, but it definitely seems to be patterning a little bit left. But let's try some other fun stuff. Okay, guys, since it still seems to be working, let's shoot some pop bottles. Oh, I pulled it. There it is. Yep, you got to hold a little right. Yep. So this gun, I think, that's definitely for me, is shooting a little left. So aiming a little right after I made those 2 corrections, we nailed them. Let's shoot one in slow motion. Okay, guys, just got back and was going to clean the pistol, and I realized I never even showed you guys how to disassemble the thing. So better late than never. There is a misconception about these Nambu pistols that they are very difficult to disassemble and complicated, and that's not entirely the case if you know what you're doing. So first things first, make sure that that magazine is unloaded and that the gun is empty. And you will push down the muzzle, and right up here is the firing pin plunger. You're going to push that in. Sorry, my hands are a little bit in the way, but you guys will understand. You push that in and you will unthread it, this cocking piece here, until you notice it's out. That'll come off. Got the firing pin plunger and spring, and there is a magazine disconnect in these Nambus, so you have to invert it with the magazine in, pull the trigger, you give it a little shake, and that firing pin will come out. Next step, I remove the magazine, I push the muzzle down, press in the magazine release button, and you pull off the trigger guard. And that's an entire separate piece right there. Then the upper will come off from the lower, and for just an average field strip, that's all you got to do for that lower piece. You have your locking block that goes in right there. This is the locking system of the gun. This comes off, and then the bolt slides out, and it has two springs that go in the sides, which is a little bit interesting. But that is the Nambu completely, basically field stripped. And putting it back together is the same easy process. You will throw those springs back in. You will slide it back into this upper barrel assembly, and don't forget that locking block. Put that in, and sometimes I find it's easier to make sure that this is upside down. We will slide that in and make sure that that locking block doesn't fall out of the magazine, because that can happen. Then you take your trigger assembly right here, press the magazine release again, and now the pistol is locked together. At this point, I will insert the magazine, take the firing pin, slide it back in like I showed you guys earlier, pull that trigger so it drops all the way and makes it much easier so you're not fighting all that spring pressure. There's your magazine, that's your firing pin spring, the plunger, and the cocking piece. So, kind of take a little finagling to get this without getting it cross-threaded. So that's one thing you want to be careful of. Get a couple turns on it, then you put pressure on that plunger, and you'll find that it'll drop in. And then once it drops in, you can finish screwing this in till it stops, and then you back it off a little bit. It'll go in there, and you are back in function. So now I will take it apart again and clean it. But that is how you disassemble the Type 14 Nambu pistol. Okay guys, so in conclusion for the Type 14 Nambu Quest for Reliability, I think we have figured out that it's all about ammunition. A lot of the ammunition that is supplied here in America, or has been supplied in the past, has been horrible stuff, underpowered. You can see how this Nambu started to work correctly once you had full-powered ammunition in it. And I really think that that is the key to most of the issues in these guns. And there can be some spring stuff, but you can buy some new springs. But for the most part, I believe it is ammunition related. So we will continue to test this, but I think we can conclusively say for now that a Nambu working correctly is better than using a katana. I've heard that claimed as no wonder they carried swords because their pistols were so horrible. I just don't think that that's entirely true from what I found using this new ammo. So the next time that you will be seeing this pistol, hopefully we will be doing a run and gun versus the old 1911. So until next time, I've been Ivan, and we'll catch you on Forest Firearms.